Hello and welcome back to Dees TV. Tonight we are joined for another changing room chat, another change of location. This time we're in the office and we're joined by Rob Staerck, Community Liaison Officer. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So just talk to us a little bit about your role. What is a Community Liaison Officer when they're at home?
It's basically I take responsibility for reaching out to the local primary schools and secondary schools. So I run that side of it, and then also John's got me on a mission to try and find funding pots. So I'm sort of like the fisherman with the hook, catch the fish and then bring them back into the club and the exec committee for it to be actioned by someone else, whether it comes to grants, in a way sponsorship, coaching deals, stuff like that.
Okay, brilliant. So that's quite a really involved job. Just sort of talk to us about how you go about that day to day. So what sort of things are you up to? You know, you mentioned there that you do primary schools and organising deals with local grants. Just sort of finite that down onto, say, just the primary schools. What's involved in getting into a primary school?
The primary schools have been made a lot easier since last January. Mm-hmm. We've got a relationship with the school games officer, the local SGA, who's responsible for, I think it's 23 of the primary and secondary schools. Before, it was a bit of a mission to try and actually find the right person within a school, so you'd get emailed and bounced around. Whereas now, Will Wheeler, he's the main contact with the school. If they want tag rugby, touch rugby, or some more specific coaching in secondary schools, everything goes through him. So I will go into a primary school for 6 or 7 weeks, start off with an introduction to tag rugby with the evasion games, etc. And then build it up over the weeks to the final 2 weeks where it will be them playing tag rugby. What we then do is we then hold tournaments down here for the local schools. We sort of dual it as a recruitment for the club. That's why we hold them at the club, so they get to come down. They get a little quick tour of the club, and then they play games against other schools. It's been quite successful. We've picked up, each year group tournament that we've done, we've picked up a couple of players, and it is casting out the net wide enough so kids get exposure to rugby, because rugby in school in the area hasn't got the same presence as football.
Yeah, sure.
So it's getting them down and keeping them involved, keeping it fun for them.
Okay, so just imagine that we've got a few primary school teachers watching now that are with special interests in PE. Why is it important for us to be able to go into these schools, not just for a club, but from their perspective? What benefits do they gain?
You know, what I've found, and this is no disrespect to PE teachers or to the PE coordinators in schools, they cover a host of sports, from football to dodgeball to handball, netball, hockey, and quite a few others. What we can offer is to go into more detail as coaches, or give the kids sort of more skills. Sure. It's not just when I go into the primary schools, it's not just tag rugby. It's working on evasion, it's working on teamwork.
So it really
movements.
fits into the curriculum.
Yeah, so it fits, and what you tend to find is you can get the kids at the beginning, tag rugby, no, I don't want to do that, because they've seen rugby on the telly, with players running in with contact, and the perception is, we're going to get hurt if we play rugby. You break it down to the simplest form, and then over the weeks you start to see the kids that were reluctant in week 1 really start enjoying it.
Right.
It's also giving the PE teachers or the PE coordinators chance to experience other things off of myself as a coach. So I know that some schools, they've seen games that I've used in tag rugby, and they've used it in a football perspective, just as a different sort of tool for getting kids active. Okay,
that's interesting. So, outside of the primary school setting, there are lots of jobs that you work on.
Yeah.
Just before the cameras went live, you mentioned Project Rugby. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Project Rugby is it's run by Premiership Rugby.
Yeah.
All the Premiership clubs have to provide this scheme. The community manager at Northampton Saints contacted me and he said, you know what, we want to bring rugby into Dunstable. So what it is, it's still in, the project has got to go ahead. I'm in the negotiations side of it with teachers. We're basically going to sign up 5 to 6 local Dunstable schools. You have to focus on an age group between year 8s and year 11s. That then coincides with the junior age groups down at the club. So with talks with the teachers and Northampton Saints and myself, we're actually this year we're going to focus on year 8s, which is the under 13s, and then you go into schools for a set amount of hours. You're coaching the sporty, higher ability kids that are more likely to join the club.
Sure.
You coach them the rugby in the contact form. And then what you do is after the 6 weeks, you bring all the schools together when we host a tournament down at Dunstable Rugby Club, along with a couple of Northampton Saints players and other community coaches from Northampton Saints, with the view of attracting new members to the club. It ups the profile of rugby in the schools, but also for a club, hopefully we'll be able to benefit members. If this year with year 8 is a success, then hopefully if the funding is still there from Premiership Rugby, next season we go to the year 8s in that year, which is this year's year 7s, and we can keep rolling it through.
So lots of clubs don't have a community office, so whether that be that they haven't got somebody that's capable of going into schools every day, whether it be through work commitments or other reasons. We're quite lucky with yourself because you work alongside the RFU anyway. How important is it for a club like ours to have somebody out there beating the drum at junior level?
Personally, I think it's important for the sport as a whole. Society's changed over the years. Kids or young adults aren't necessarily all involved in sports. There's a lot more sports available from when I was a kid, from martial arts, football, rock climbing, skiing, ice hockey. American football's quite a new one with the team just setting up in Milton Keynes. So all different local community clubs are now competing. By getting in there, you're giving them a taster. You're dangling the carrot to them of the sport. You don't, with the all schools, you don't go in sort of intense. So it's not a case of you're looking at a pinpoint accurate line out or scrummaging. You coach in the introduction to rugby. Yes, you cover the tackling. Generally, we go to 3-man scrums and uncontested line-outs. But you're creating the excitement and the whip for kids to want to, become members of the club or take part in rugby. And then when you get them into the club, it's then that the skills of the game are coached at a more in-depth level, because there is a big difference between club rugby and school rugby. And it's just sort of bridging that gap. Generally, it's been quite successful. You get pupils at school that come down and join an age group. Some may stay a few weeks because they realise that the sport isn't necessarily for them, and others will stay year on year. The primary schools, I think personally, is the big one because you're catching them young. It's a bit, because it's taken away, there's no contact. The enjoyment for the kids is higher, and then they get to step in as the age grades go up.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, that's a fantastic insight into sort of what you do. I feel like we've just sort of taken the tip off the iceberg there. I think we could spend hours and hours divulging all your trade secrets, but we won't steal those from you. So thank you ever so much for your time.
No problem.
You've been watching Deeds TV. This has been Changing Room Chat. I've been Dickie. This has been Rob. And if you've enjoyed this, why not hit that like and subscribe button? We'll see you next time.